So, welcome to Booksalve and to this first video in the 100 Great Reads series that I've got, selecting books from my library that I think are great reads. And we start off with this one here by Kobo Abe called The Woman in the Dunes. It's translated from the Japanese by Edale Saunders, and it's appropriate that the first book I get to present is a novel in translation. I love the way reading translated fiction provides me with the insight into cultures that are foreign to me. Even more than reading a non-fiction book about Japan, reading Japanese fiction opens the door on how Japanese people think, how they live their lives, and how they apprehend the world. It opens that door. Kobo Abe was a visionary Japanese writer, a playwright, and a photographer. Often regarded as one of the most original voices of post-war Japan. It's born in Tokyo in 1924 and raised in Manchuria. Abe originally studied medicine, but turned into literature, where he found his true calling. He rose to international fame with this particular novel in 1962, The Woman in the Dunes. It's a surreal and haunting exploration of isolation, identity, and the absurdity of human existence. The novel, along with The Boxman and The Face of the Other, exemplifies Abe's signature style, blending Kafkaesque existentialism with elements of science fiction and psychological horror. Abe's fiction breaks with the Shisosetsu eye novel tradition that dominated 20th century literature, which was a confessional, introspective style rooted in personal experience and realism. His novels contrast with this, and the contrast with the emotionally resonant works of contemporaries like Yasunari Kawabata and Kenzaburo Oe. Abe was deeply influenced by Western philosophy, especially existentialism, and his works often grapple with themes of alienation and the breakdown of personal identity in modern society. Yet he was also shaped by the trauma of war and Japan's rapid post-war modernization, which gave his writing a uniquely unsettling, almost dystopian edge. Beyond novels, Abe was also a successful dramatist and founded his own experimental theatre group, where he brought his abstract, often disorientating narratives to life on stage, and his work challenged traditional Japanese literary forms and continues to influence writers and filmmakers worldwide. He died in 1993, but his legacy endures as his stories continue to resonate with readers seeking meaning in an increasingly fragmented world. This feels strange because it is formal. I'm reading this, and some of this is obviously not perhaps the way. Although I've tried to change it a bit, it does sound rather stilted. I apologise for that, but there we are. We'll see how it goes and how we develop. A 1964 film adaptation of the novel, also entitled The Woman in the Dunes, directed by Hiroshi Teshigahara, with a collaboration from Kobo Abe, and it's a landmark of Japanese cinema and one of the most powerful screen adaptations of a novel in world film history, it says here. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have seen bits of the film. I haven't watched all of it, and it is impressive. It is impressive. The novel tells of an amateur entomologist named Junpei Niki, who travels to a remote desert village to collect insect specimens. Interesting that it's insects, isn't it? Because it's a sort of Nabokovian thing with butterflies and insects, and this feels a bit like a collaboration between Nabokov and Kafka, the kind of thing that they might have written if you imagine such a person. When he misses the last bus back, the villagers offer him shelter for the night in a house at the bottom of an inescapable sandpit. And there he encounters a young widow who lives alone, who's forced to constantly shovel sand to prevent her shelter in the pit from being buried. I don't think, from what I remember, you find out why the villagers have actually isolated her there and put her in there, whether it's through some kind of fear or tradition, or she's done something wrong which has ostracized her from the village society. Don't know. Perhaps it says. The next morning, Junpei, don't know, Junpei, I'm going to carry on saying, realizes the ladder he has descended is gone. He's a prisoner, forced by the villagers to help the woman with her endless, futile task of digging. The sand is a constant threat, creeping into everything, symbolizing the absurdity and monotony of existence. At first, Junpei resists and plots escape, but over time he becomes psychologically entangled in the routine and the woman and the strange rhythm of life in the pit. And what begins as captivity slowly turns into a grim kind of acceptance, even a comfort. And the book encompasses much of what I like to read in terms of the themes it tackles: alienation and absurdity, loss of identity and control, existential struggle for meaning in a repetitive and indifferent world. Consequently, I've got a great love for this book. It's a great one to start with, really. Abe's, I mean, as I mentioned before, clearly influenced by Western culture, so you might ask the question of how does his novel reflect his Japanese origin? And I think there are some features and some differences that you can detect. The novels is less about rebellion than it is about transformation. The quiet shift in Junpei's perspective is more aligned with Japanese philosophical assimilation of experience than Western defiance. I think in a Western approach, he would fight against this and try to beat it, and that would be his success or failure in doing that would be the message. Whereas this Japanese approach is one where although there's opposition to the state that he's in, there's also a resignation and acceptance of it, a way in which he absorbs that into his own life. He sheds off his desire to escape and resigns himself to finding meaning in a Zen-like equanimity in the laborious, repetitive task of clearing the sand. In the early 1960s, Japan was still struggling to come to terms with the loss of identity after the defeat in World War II, and the novel reflects the enduring conflict in Japan between traditional communal values and the rise of Western-style individualism. I think this comes alive perhaps in other Japanese novels that I've read, this difference between the older generation and with more placing lots of value in Japanese traditions, and the new younger generation who have embraced the internationalism and Americanization that has happened very much, and that the tensions that has arisen is reflected more in other novels than it is in this one. But I'll read a short extract from the novel to give you a flavour of the book. Here we go. It was unbelievable. The rope ladder had vanished from the place it had been the night before. The marker bags, half buried by the sand, were perfectly visible. There was no mistake. He remembered the spot. He wondered, had the ladder alone been swallowed up by the sand? He rushed to the wall and sank his arms into the sand, groping for it. The sand gave way, unresisting, and ran down. However, he wasn't trying to find a needle in a haystack. If he didn't succeed with the first try, he never would, no matter how much he searched. Stifling his rising apprehension, he looked again in blank amazement at the abruptness of the slope. Wasn't there some spot that it could be scaled, he wondered? He circled the house 2 or 3 times, looking. If he climbed up on the roof of the house, the distance to the rim of the hole would be shortest on the northern side, towards the sea. But it would still be over 30 feet, and what was more, the wall there was steeper than anywhere else. The massive brow of sand which hung down seemed exceedingly dangerous. The west wall seemed to be a comparatively gentle incline, having a curved surface inside of it, like the inside of a cone. At an optimistic estimate, it was probably around 50 or even 45 degrees. Cautiously, he took a probing step. With each step forward, he slid back half a step. Even so, it looked as though he could make it with a very great effort. Things went as he had expected for the first 5 or 6 steps, and then his feet began to sink into the sand, and before he knew whether he was making progress or not, he was buried up to his knees and seemed to have lost all power of movement. Then he attempted frantically to scramble up on all fours. The burning sand scorched his palms. Sweat poured from his whole body. Sand and sweat blinded him, and soon he had cramps in his legs and was unable to move them at all. He stopped struggling and caught his breath, assuming that he had already covered a considerable distance, but when he opened his eyes, squinting, he was amazed to find that he had come not even 5 yards. What exactly had he accomplished by all this effort, he wondered. Moreover, the incline that he had climbed seemed to be far steeper than when he had first looked at it from below, and above where he stood it looked even worse. Even though he had wanted to climb up, he seemed to have spent all his energy simply burrowing into the sand wall. The brow of the sand just above his face blocked his path. In desperation, he tried to struggle on a little further, but the instant he reached out for the sand over his head, his footing gave way. He was spewed out from the sand and flung to the bottom of the hole. His left shoulder made a sound like the splitting of chopsticks, but he did not notice any pain. For some time, fine sand rustled gently down the face of the cliff, as if to ease the hurt he had received, and then it stopped. Anyway, his injury was an exceedingly small one. It was still too soon to be frightened. Yeah, well, it's a great piece, isn't it? I love this one, and you should read it. I've added most of Kobo Abe's other novels to my collection, and they're all good too, although I'm missing the Kangaroo Notebook for some reason. We've already seen the front of this particular edition. There are a few more knocking about that I see, but in this series of editions of his other books, there's a pleasing design that's common to all of them. This is the Arc Sakura. This one, which is the ruined map. Secret Rendezvous. The Boxman, and The Face of Another. And personally, I think they're all worth reading. Yeah, that's interesting. How does this happen? You see, there's 4 of these where the pages have yellowed, and 1, The Secret Rendezvous, where they've stayed white. Bizarre. Okay, so that's book 1 of 100 great reads that I would recommend to you, and it's goodbye from Booksalve, and happy reading to you all.